Okay, so now that you have your math practice test out and you have a writing utensil, we'll have the sub pass out the sheet that looks like this so that you have the answers, and then I'm going to show you how you're supposed to be marking it because they've got these weird, lines and stuff out here, and then there's going to be a box you have to fill out. Um, so go ahead and get that, pause it, and then turn me back on when you're ready. All right, so what you're going to do is, so you'll get your packet, and let's say you're going problem by problem so you can grade it. So number 1 is E. And so if you got that one right, then on the line next to it, you're going to put a 1 there. Okay, so when you get it right, you put a 1. If you get it wrong, you leave it blank. Number 2 is H. So let's say I got that one right. You put a 1. Number 3 is A. Oh, I got that one wrong. Then we would just leave it blank. Okay, so you're going to go through that and do that for all the problems. Now stop, don't start yet, listen to these instructions. So once you're done going through them, there's 3 columns because there's 3 different types of questions that can be shown on the test. So you're going to break it up. So once you're done grading the whole thing, then you will count up all the ones that you received in up to 31, all of the ones that you received and you got an answer on, and put it in the first table here. Okay, then you'll count up the second column, which is AG column, and then you're going to put your how many you had right there, and then your GT column, you're going to put that answer there, and then you'll add those up and put your number here. Now I know we didn't do a full 60 questions, but just write that number there, and then I'll tell you what to do with that number so we can estimate how you did. Okay, go ahead and pause it and grade all the way through number 31. You put a 1 on the line if you get it right, leave it blank if you get it wrong. Okay, so now that you've done that, and let's say mine, I got a total of 16 right. I didn't do as well as I had hoped I did. So let's say you put 16 here. I only gave you half of the test, and numbers 1 through 30, or 31 in this case, those are the easiest problems, and as you go higher, they're going to get harder. So we're going to estimate how many more you would have gotten right by taking half of this number. So my half of 16 is 8, and I'm going to add that number to it. Because typically you're not going to get as many correct as you keep going. Okay, so take whatever score you got correct, how many total numbers that you had correct out of the 31, and we're going to add half of that score to it because you'll get maybe, it's a good estimate, since we didn't take the whole test, a good estimate is take about half of what you got here and add it on. So then I would have gotten a total of 24 problems right out of 30, or out of 60, which is not very good. Okay, but let's say that's what mine was. So out of the 31 questions, I only got 16 total correct, and then you cut that number in half and add it to this to get an estimated raw score out of 60. Okay? So once you do that, then I got 24 problems correct. Now you're going to turn it over. Make sure you're looking in the math column, which is this second column here, out of English, math, reading, and science. Look at math. So I'm going to find my raw score. So I had 24 correct. So then I follow that over. So I have a scaled score of 18. So then I'm going to put that over here. I'll just put SS. I want you to put SS for scaled score. And mine was 18. So that's a good estimate of what your scaled score would have been had you done the rest of these problems. Now, it's not an exact science, and the next test we take, we'll take on a Friday where we get the whole hour to take it so you can see a fair representation of how many you got right, and you'll be applying the strategies that we're going to talk about here momentarily. Okay? So once you've estimated it, you counted how many you had right, cut that number in half and add it to that score. That'll give you a raw score of how many you would have gotten right out of 60, so it's a rough estimate. Then you go and find, I got 24, so I had to look in the math column, 24, and then follow it over is an 18 scaled score, and then write that on your sheet. And you should also have numbers here because when I get back, we're going to talk about these numbers here because these are the types of problems you're going to get. So the EAs represent pre-algebra and elementary algebra, just like algebra 1. And notice most of the first 30 questions are your elementary algebra and your algebra 1. So that's pre-algebra and algebra 1. Well, that makes sense because the first 30 questions are supposed to be easy. The ones after 30, those are EAs get fewer, and they're going to be more your upper level algebra 1 questions. Not pre-algebra probably. The AG is your intermediate algebra, which is like algebra 2 and your coordinate geometry. So you would have covered that in geometry. That's your middle column. So those are pretty well spread throughout because you can have, I guess I see more of them in this upper region here. But those are going to be slightly harder because it's higher math. And then you've got your plane geometry and some trig stuff. Okay. And so notice there's not so much at the beginning of the test that you took. There weren't a whole lot of those. There are more of them in the last half, which makes sense because those problems are harder and trig problems are harder. Okay. So if you get through algebra 2, so you take algebra 1, algebra 2, and geometry, you're good for the majority of the test. Trig, they throw some stuff in there that they do some SOHCAHTOA stuff that you would have learned in geometry, but then they also do some of your other trig, cosecants, and cotangents and things like that you would know unless you took a trig class. But there are not as many of those on the tests because typically they say if you get through algebra 2, you should be good for this ACT math. Okay, now you're going to keep this score sheet with your scaled score that you figured out and your raw score on it and your packet. Keep all of those. The explanation for each of the problems on 1 through 30 is posted on Schoology under College Crate, under Standardized Test Practice. And then there's a math folder that you can see in there. So this was practice test number 1. Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to work on is some math strategies. So go ahead and pause it in the sub, pass out the worksheet that says math approaches and strategies. Go ahead and pause it and do that. All right, so the next thing we are going to cover are some math strategies and some approaches. So these are different strategies, or different approaches, I should say, to distinguish between the two, on how you should go about the problems on the test and pace yourself. If your goal score is here, 20 to 24, then you are going to concentrate most of your time, like 45 minutes of your time or more, maybe 50, should be on 1 through 30 because you need to get all but maybe 1 or 2 of these easy ones correct. So that's going slower than 1 minute, 1 question per minute. Okay, because these are the easy ones, and if you're pretty basic with your math skills and you aren't super great at it, then you're aiming here for your scaled score, then you need to concentrate and spend as much time as possible, around 45 to 50 minutes, on the easiest problems so that you can get all of them correct. Because if you want to get at least a 20 on the math score, you have to get half the questions right. You need 30 questions correct to get the bottom of the 20s here at number 20. Now, as you get a few more, if you get about 5 or 6 more questions, then that'll bump you to the higher 24 range. Okay? So concentrate on 1 through 30. Be picky means try to eliminate choices if you don't remember how to do the math, because your best strategy is to remember how to do the math. If you remember how to do the math problem, do it and get the answer and move on. Now, these are going to be harder on 31 through 50. So be picky means to maybe use one of the strategies that we're going to go over. But don't spend too much time on it. These are not to be time sucks. You do not want this to take all of your time. Okay, so eliminate some choices if you can, use a strategy if you can, otherwise just guess and move on. Now, at the 5-minute warning, because you always get a 5-minute warning for every test, that's when you're going to start bubbling in randomly answers. So 51 through 60 are going to be the hardest problems on the test. And if you're just trying to get this lower score here, you are not concerned with those last 10 hardest problems on the test. You are going to guess on them and then go back through your Scantron, so we'll give you a bubble sheet this next time. Go through your bubble sheet. If there was one you skipped, which I don't recommend you do, but if there was one you skipped, you need to go back and bubble in an answer for it. Okay? That needs to be done in the last 5 minutes, and then if that only takes you about 2.5 minutes or so, then go back and work on one of these other ones that you were close on and you thought you might have had an answer, and then use that the rest of the time. But once they call time, you must put your pencil down. You cannot work any time past that, or that will invalidate your test. Okay? Now, if you go up one more, so maybe you're pretty good with math, and you want to aim for the 25 to 29 range, okay? Then you're going to spend most of your time on the first 40 questions. Again, concentrate. So this is going to be like 45 to 50 minutes. So you're a little better at math. You feel a little more comfortable. So you're going to add an extra 10 questions that this top group didn't have that you're going to really concentrate on. Because if you get 40 questions right, approximately 40, that'll be the 25 range. Or that'll get you the lowest of this score, which is 25. So again, you're concentrating on the easiest ones, being picky, like we said earlier, on 41 through 50, and then still at the 5-minute warning, you're not even spending time on those really, really hard questions. You bubble them in, and then go back and use the rest of the time to check, make sure you have all your questions answered, and if there's one you want to spend a couple more minutes on and you've got time, do it. Okay. Then as you go up 30 to 33, you're concentrating on the first 50 questions. You're not really guessing on any of these unless you get to the point be picky and you just have to guess. But you're not just blindly guessing. If you're getting a 30 to 33 on the math, you have to work out every single problem. And you have to be ahead of a minute per question because you need more time on these problems. So the 1 through 50, if you can make sure that some of those you get done in like 10 seconds because you just know them, then that helps you save time and get ahead on your time so that when you get to the harder problems and you have to think about them more, you will be able to do that. Okay. And then if your goal is 34 to 36, you have to do the first 50 questions in 40 minutes. That's way less than a minute per problem. Okay. And then that saves extra time to go back to any questions you needed to, and then to also have time to focus on those last hardest 10 problems. Okay. Now, when it says to guess, like you're just bubbling in, it doesn't matter. There is no quote unquote best strategy. I know some people say, well, just mark C for all of them. That doesn't matter. You still have a 20% chance of getting it right no matter what method you use. Okay. All right, so pacing. And on this next test we take, they don't give you a 30-minute warning, but I'm gonna say at 30 minutes, I want you to put a star next to the problem you're on, because in order to help pace yourself to make sure that whatever score you're trying to get, so let's say I'm trying to get a 26. So if I want a 26, then at the 30-minute mark, I should be on number 26 of the problem, because I'm spending more than a minute. So this says to spend, we're going to have to spend more than just a minute per problem on the 1 through 40s. Okay, so when you get to the 30-minute mark, whatever score you're trying to get, so I was trying to get a 25 here, then I need to be on number 25 at 30 minutes. Okay, so we'll check your pacing on the next one. Now, they say 4 strategies because they count guessing as a strategy, but that is your last resort. Your first best strategy is that you know how to do the math. You just remember the process for solving a problem, and you just do that. Otherwise, if you don't remember, then we start trying to use these 4 strategies. Estimate, plug in numbers, which means use numbers based on what the question said. So that's a little different than check the choices. So Plug in numbers and check the choices might sound the same now, but we'll do practice problems to show you the difference between the two strategies. And then again, guessing is your last resort. Okay. All right, so let's look at the first one. So this one is estimation. This is by far the most important strategy for doing questions you cannot do using a standard mathematical procedure. So let's pretend, because you might be reading number one and you know exactly how to solve it, but let's pretend like you didn't know how to solve it. So here's how I would use estimation for this problem. All right, 5 pounds, I know gives me $12, or it costs $12. If I double that, so let's say I want to go 10 pounds, that would cost $24. I'll just add 12 here. Add 5 pounds here, add $12 here. If I had 15 pounds, then add $12, and that would be 36. Now, I purchased using $30, and that is in between these two. So then by my estimation, I have to be between 10 and 15 pounds. So if you look at your choices, there's 10, there's 15, but you have to be between that to get to your $30. So then C is the correct answer. Now, sometimes instead of just eliminating it down to one choice, maybe they'll have two choices. But if not, then great, you just estimated the answer. Now, I do want to show you the math behind this. This can be done with a proportion. So if I put 5 pounds over $12, and that equals X pounds, I don't know how many pounds, that costs me $30. Then you could cross multiply, so that would be 150 equals 12x, and then you would still have gotten x equals 12.5. So this is a proportion problem. But again, if you did not remember the math, here's the strategy that you could use on this one. You couldn't use any of the other strategies on this. It had to be estimation. Okay. Like it says here, many times estimation will only allow you to eliminate 2 or 3 choices. So then if there's more than one choice left over, pick the most reasonable. Okay. All right, so that was estimation. Now here's check the choices. So plug in the choices or use a mathematical procedure to find the correct answer. So on this one, we want this, and we want to know what is it factored. Well, since all the choices are parentheses, you could refoil these out and see which one gives you this, 6x squared plus 4x minus 2. Now, I don't want to do all of it. I'm just going to either pick to check the firsts or the lasts. Well, if I look at all the first, 6x times x is 6x squared, 6x times x, 6x squared, 3x, 2x, yep. Yes, so all of those give me the 6x squared. Let's check to see which one gives me -2. Well, what's 1 times -3? -3, that's not it, so A's out. 3 times -1, -3, that's out. We want -2 at the end. -1 times -2 is +2. 2 times -1, that's a possibility. And then 4 times -2 is -8. No. So that is the only choice that works. Now, remembering how to do this, the actual mathematic way, we do 6 times -2 is -12, and we need 4 in the middle. So we then say, what multiplies to give me -12 and adds to give me 4? So what's that? 6 and -2. So then we write 6x squared at the beginning, and we put that -2 at the end, but we rewrite the middle. Now I'm going to write plus 6x and minus 2x. And we group. Out of the first group, we take out a 6x. Then we're left with x plus 2. Second group has a minus sign in front, so we're going to take out -2, which leaves me positive x, and -2 divided by -2 is positive 1. Whoops, this should be 1. 6 divided by 6 is 1 plus 1. They have the same parentheses, so x plus 1 is one of your parentheses. The other one is 6x minus 2, which is the choice that we had. It was just, oh, because I had a GCF. Wait, what did I do wrong? Oh yeah, we did have a GCF. Oh, because what happened? Let me go back. The order mattered on this one is they could have did minus 2x and plus 6x, I think. And then when you pull it out, because this one has a couple different factorizations, because technically they could have divided by 2 on all of these and had a GCF of 2 in the middle, but they didn't. So we could have taken out a 2x here, and that would have left 3x minus 1. And we could have taken out a 2 here, and that would have been 3x minus 1. So yeah, that one. But checking the choices would have been faster than all of that work we did too, and it is about saving time. So if you could check the choices with something like this, please do. Here's another check the choices strategy, where these are possible values of x, and so you could plug them in. So if I started with 4, for instance, if I work my way up, if I did 1 over 4, I'm plugging in x is 4, I'm checking letter E, plus 1 over 4, that does not equal 8. So that's why that one is out. If I put in 2, 1/2 plus 1/2, nope, that doesn't equal 8. 1, 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1, so that's 1 plus 1 is not 8. If you try 1/2, 1 divided by 1/2, or you could put in your calculator 1 divided by 0.5 plus 1 divided by 0.5. You could put that instead of 1/2. That's not going to equal 8. It's going to give you 4. This will come out to be 2 plus 2, and that's not 8. So then your choice is this one, because if you do 1 divided by 1/4, which is 0.25 in your calculator, plus 1 divided by 0.25, which is 1/4 again in your calculator, that will equal 8. So if you don't remember how to solve this problem, you could have done that. Now, how you solve it is you multiply by the common denominator x all the way across. So that'd be x over x, which is 1, plus x over x if I distribute, which is 1, and then equals 8x. So 2 equals 8x, divided by 8. That's where the 1 point. But if you didn't remember this math, you could have checked these choices and plugged them in for x to see which one gave you equal to 8. That's the most common way to check your choices, especially when you're solving equations and it's really complicated equation and you don't remember how to do it. Plug in the numbers for x and see which one gives you what it's supposed to equal. Let's check the choices. That is different than plug in numbers. This is where we choose numbers. So we're going to choose numbers from the criteria to test into the choices. So the other one, we were taking the choices and plugging them into the given information. Here, we're going to take the given information and plug it into the choices. So it says if n is an odd integer, which of the following is an even integer? Well, first, let's remember what integers are. Those are your numbers that are like your negative whole numbers, including 0, and then your positive whole numbers go on forever. So 0 is included in there, and it's your positive and negative whole numbers are your integers. So here they're telling us n is an odd integer. Now, I would stay away from using 1s and 0s as any of those. So I'm going to use n equal 3, because 3 is an odd integer. So you're picking something from this given information and coming up with your own number, own example, and then we're going to plug it in to all of the choices to see which one gives me an even integer. Okay, so if I do 3 to the third, what is that? That's 27. Nope, that's not even. We do 3 over 4, that's 0.75, which is not even an integer. Decimals and fractions are not integers. So that's out. So 2 times 3 plus 3, that's 6 plus 3 is 9. Nope, not an even integer. Then I plug in 3 here. 3 times 3 plus 3, that's 3 times 6 is 18. Jackpot. because we were looking for pick an odd integer that when you plug it into each of these, you get an even integer. And this one doesn't work because when you do the square root of 3, you get a decimal. So it's not an integer. So plug-in numbers is different than check the choices. Plug-in numbers is you look at the given information and come up with some number to represent n, and then you plug it into each of the choices to see which one gives you your expected outcome, which we wanted an even integer. Whereas check the choices, you're taking the choices and plugging them into the given information. And then guessing is your last resort. Okay, randomly, it doesn't matter, pick the same letter every time, do abadabba, whatever. You still have a 1 in 5 chance of getting it right no matter what guessing method you use. If you can eliminate, if you look at the choices and clearly there's one that's completely different than the others, just eliminate it. And then you've got it down to at least 4 choices instead of 5. So that raises your odds of getting it right to a 25%. Okay. Now, when we get together next time, we're going to do some practice problems where you could use the strategies if you don't remember the math way to solve it, like the mathematical procedure to solve it. Okay. So we'll spend a day doing that and practicing that. And then we'll spend a Friday taking an actual hour-long math test for you to be able to try the strategies and actually see what your whole raw score would be instead of having to estimate it like we did today. Okay. So keep this math approaches and strategies, put it in the classwork section of your Avid binder, okay? And also put the tests that you just graded and the grade sheet that you just wrote your raw score and scaled score on, put that in the classwork section of Avid. So you're gonna have to 3-hole punch it. I didn't punch it in case I got rid of parts of your questions that you needed to read, but now you can 3-hole punch it and put it in your classwork section of Avid, and I'll be collecting those next time. Okay, if there's any time left in the block, then you need to use that as binder organization, Cornell note repetition, doing homework for another class, but you need to be sitting quietly and it's not social time. Thank you.